Welcome, everyone, to the No Bull Just Bacon podcast. I am your host, Dr. Allan, and with me here today is my friend, Coach Tracy Steen, to answer all of your burning health and fitness questions. Tracy is an international online coach helping women get fit, strong, and confident for life. With a focus on strength training, nutrition, and sustainable wellness, she empowers women to navigate midlife with energy and resilience. Tracy delivers practical strategies that turn consistency into lasting results. Thank you so much for joining me today, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me. You said midlife and energy in the same sentence. That's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, we're thinking very positively on today's show, and
We
hopefully
are.
we'll be able to give some insight, not only into what people are going through, but into how to manage it, proper expectations and how to improve and thrive during it. So today, we will be talking about empowering women in midlife and optimizing health. So not to bluntly get into things, but let's start out with a difficult one. What are the biggest misconceptions women in midlife have about fitness and their bodies?
Well, I think a lot of women come to, starting to work out and think that they're going to get adaptations really quickly. And for a lot of people, if they've done nothing and then they start working out, you actually are going to see some adaptations nice and quick. You're going to maybe
Mhm.
see some increased muscle, some increased energy. But for another whole subset of people, I think we expect to see change really quickly. And of course we do, because look at what's advertised to us, right? We
Yeah.
have get abs in 7 days, quick arm workout in 10 minutes a day, which we all know it just takes a little bit longer than that. But I think the biggest thing that I'm on a mission to tell people is that it is that consistency over time that does work, right? Ovid says dripping water on the stone hollows it out, not through force, but through persistence. And that really is the message, right? That we show up regularly, consistently over time and drip, drip, drip the water on the stone. And then, after a month, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, we're going to notice that we're trending in the right direction and we're starting to optimize our health that way. But yeah, I think a misconception is that it's going to happen overnight if I just change. And then so often people take a big bite out of fitness and nutrition, right? Like they change everything and it's not sustainable, right? We talk
Hmm.
about doing things in a sustainable way for the long haul. And I think creating that identity habit is a huge piece to that. Don't you think? Like people really would benefit from thinking about health and fitness to actually saying, I want to be a fit and healthy person who does things like this forever
Hmm.
and ever.
I think what you're getting at here is extremely important. And it's one of the avenues that I wanted to essentially explore
Yeah.
on today's show, because I think that what you're saying here is very true. When people first start out on a health and fitness journey, we often have these very distinct external reasons for doing it. I want to look
Sure.
better at the beach. My doctors told me that I need to do this. And it's not necessarily that you fully bought in with health, but you just kind of feel obligated into getting into it. And what you're mentioning here is something that is extremely important, because what you're talking about is essentially an intrinsic shift of
Mm-hmm.
motivation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that intrinsic shift of motivation is extremely important, because when people first get into this, they think a lot of times, I'll sign up with a coach that will keep me motivated. The coach will be my cheerleader. I don't know how your experience is with this, but I actually find that the people that depend on that, they tend to
Yes.
have a much harder time moving
Mm-hmm.
forward and making it sustainable. And so there's nothing wrong with these external forces that get you motivated to do it. Saying you want to look better naked is a completely valid reason to do it.
Sure.
It's probably not going to sustain it for the rest of your life. And being conscious of that is really important. And so your comment about shifting things into identity,
Mm-hmm.
you're not just playing at getting into the gym, you're actually an athlete. This is something that you do. It's not that I'm forced to go into the gym. It's this is what I do. This is who I am. And hopefully we can start to shift people to like completely intrinsic, to where they say, I actually enjoy going to the gym. But that's not always achievable, nor is it required, but at least shifting a little bit more intrinsically to identity is very important. And so I think that your comment there about it making a big difference long term is extremely valid because that's where people start to view themselves in the right light. And then it's not forced to be a constant thing that they have to think about. When you put things on autopilot, life becomes a lot easier.
You
All right.
know, Seth Godin came up with this phrase that people like us do things like this. It's a marketing term, right? To say that it's a way to build identity. It's a way to build community and camaraderie around you. And so I've taken that phrase. I've given him credit, but I've taken that phrase into our Facebook community, and we say it all the time. And I will even give them a prompt, and I will say, people like us do things like this. We dot dot dot, and I want them to fill in the blanks.
Mhm.
Right. So we have about 30,000 people on our public Facebook group, Move Daily Hustle. And people will just chime in exactly what they do. And I love seeing that because it really is exactly what we just have been talking about, identity focused. We are people who will move daily on vacation. We are people who will not throw the baby out with the bathwater during holidays. We are people who make wise choices with our food and honor our body because it makes us feel good. So I really think that buying into a new identity is exactly what you said, the shift that we need if we want to stay in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. Um, Now to get into some controversial questions.
Oh, goodness.
We're pretty much on the same page as this goes, but I like to reiterate this because I think that this is a very important thing, and particularly when we talk about women in midlife, it's something that needs to be reemphasized by as many coaches as possible. How do you feel hormonal changes during menopause or perimenopause or menopause impact training and nutrition?
You know, having hormonal changes myself, I can tell you from firsthand experience how it can impact. I think a huge thing is that it impacts our sleep, right? So
Mhm.
we may not feel like we can get up and rally and do the workout, which can, of course, impact our mood, our ability to make wise choices in the kitchen, which could lead to weight gain, our ability to motivate ourselves, right? Like sleep is huge. And so if you're a woman in midlife and you're struggling with sleep, I hear you, I see you. I think it's a big challenge, and it can impact, what we do in our day to day. I think the approach to what we need to do in order to lose body fat, to increase lean muscle tissue, to increase bone density or mitigate the loss of bone mineral density is the same as what we would basically do in our 40s, right? Like it's not a huge difference. We're going to be basically doing the same things. We're going to be committing to our regular strength training. We're going to be progressively overloading. We're going to be getting adequate protein amounts in. We're going to maybe be doing our daily walks to increase our step count, to increase
Mhm.
calorie burn. Like all of those things are basic. It's basic science, and it's going to take us through from our 20s up until our 80s. Sure, a few tweaks here and there for sure, but by and large, we're looking at the same mechanism to shift our bodies. But with hormones coming into play, I think number one, giving ourselves some compassion that you will feel different in different seasons, right? Like there are seasons that I was going through hot flashes and night sweats. And like I said, it's sort of able to keep me up at night. And I didn't feel as motivated, though I did try to rely on structure, community, accountability to pull me through those seasons. But then there's other seasons where I'm like, okay, I feel really good. Ergo, I'm going to really dial in this workout today because I've got the energy, I've got the life in me. So I may as well maximize it when I do and be a little bit more gentle or kinder to myself when I don't feel like that. But again, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm still on the trajectory forward, moving toward optimizing my health and fitness. So I think sometimes people I don't want to say use hormones as an excuse because it definitely shifts how you feel and sometimes then your outlook. But there is a way through that. And that might be through conversations with your physician, like maybe visiting the fact that you might want to try menopause hormone therapy and see
Mhm.
if that helps alleviate some of these vasomotor symptoms so that you do feel better. Head is more clear, you feel more functional so that you can carry on with your, strategy to change your body. Yeah, it could be doing that. It could be joining groups or following other fitness influencers online who are giving some really great advice on how to move through this season of life. But I think for us, it is a season, and it will get through the season, folks. You're going to make it to the other side, and hopefully through the ride, you keep dripping water on the stone in ways that you can, in ways that you are showing up for yourself, and in ways that are sustainable for the long haul. What do you think about that?
Well, one of the things that you said, I'm in agreement with everything that you've said here. One of the things that you said made me think about some of the outside influences because you were talking about, hormones and everything like that. Do you think that there are specific myths about hormones and metabolism that is becoming very prevalent in the social media space that is potentially compounding these issues for people? Because this is my concern. We often see claims online being blown up. I mean, they spread like wildfire. And when some of these claims sound tremendously negative, whether they're true or not, it can influence the experience that people go through. And my concern these days with a lot of the way the messaging is being sent out here is we're seeing women's lives made more difficult because of some of the claims that are being thrown around. And maybe it's mistakenly being thrown around. Maybe it is the fact that when you have challenges that are being faced during, say, like a perimenopause period, maybe you go into a group and it becomes an echo chamber for those people that are having those struggles, and maybe it's not a distinct sign of what's going on at large, but because you're specifically looking for that problem, maybe we're reinforcing some of those concerns. Do you think that those myths that are spreading around about hormones and metabolism are making people's lives more difficult, maybe when they don't even realize that's happening?
Oh, for sure. And are you talking specifically about the fact that a lot of communication out there right now is saying that menopause specifically is causing muscle loss, menopause is causing weight gain, menopause. So they're blaming it on the menopause transition and the hormones specifically. Is that what you're sort of referring to?
That's definitely one of the topics. So talk about that. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I defer to research scientists like Dr. Lauren Clenso Semple, Dr. Stuart Phillips, Dr. Bill Campbell, and they have all done research on, is it menopause or is it age-related muscle loss, right? Is it because we're aging? And I know a lot of the research does show that regardless of menopause, as we age, we begin to lose lean muscle tissue if you do nothing to mitigate that loss,
Hmm.
and then potential loss in bone mineral density. So it's not necessarily related to the menopause transition, right? It's an age related thing, which is kind of exciting because it means that we can do something to change that. We can do something to mitigate the loss of muscle, right? Sarcopenia, which is literally translated as the loss of flesh in the Greek. And I just did a coaching call on this the other day because this is something midlife that we definitely should be concerned about. But to be fear mongered, right? Like that's a whole other part of the conversation that I hope the people who are, listening to us can recognize that this is a hopeful time, right? It's not doom and gloom, but that we actually can make these shifts toward better health and toward optimizing health by increasing our muscle and ensuring that we don't fall prey to sarcopenia or osteoporosis or osteopenia. So, yeah, I think I definitely am defaulting to the research scientists who I have loved this conversation. Actually, I'm sure you have too, because you're right. It's like one side chiming in, freaking us all out. And then it's the other side rising up and saying, whoa, Nelly,
Yeah,
don't freak out here,
pump the
folks.
brakes on this.
Bump the brakes. They're taking a broad look back. This is what I noticed. They take a broad step back. They're looking at all of the literature, all of the meta-analysis, all of the studies, all of the data, and repainting the picture in a way that calms everyone down. Like it's calming me down, it's calming my followers down. And we're just saying, okay, chill. You don't need that much protein. Don't freak out. You don't need to be doing all of this type of heavy strength training in order to, prevent bone mineral density loss, because even lighter weights could work as long as
Hmm.
you're, challenging. So I love what they are doing in this space. And I think we're going to see a bit of a pendulum swing. I honestly do. I've seen it already, because you're right. I mean, we do see a lot of people freaking out and fear mongering, but the voices of the scientists are rising loud and strong. I'm seeing it in the comments of different influencers, and their voice is strong. And I mean, you're one of those people. So thank you for your work, because it's good to read that. It's good to be confirmed within ourselves that we're on the right track, and nothing has to be extreme. Nothing has to be overt. We can just traipse along. I mean, at the end of the day, most people aren't moving daily as it is,
Hmm.
right? So
Absolutely.
if we can get them from doing nothing, sedentary life, sitting on the couch, to doing something, then we're winning as influencers, I think.
You know what's really funny when we talk about this topic? I think when you're talking about the pendulum swing, I think that that group where we have, these people that are really focused on research, and it's funny because whether you're the person that is, making these hyperbolic claims or whether you're the research side, you're both looking at the same studies and you're presenting them in vastly different ways. And it's really funny to see. And I think that this message, when it's hyperbolic, can spread a little bit better, both because it's dramatic and because a solution can be offered for it. And I think that one of the downsides to the side that's like, hey, everybody, let's calm down a little bit. Let's be a little bit more objective. A lot of these different protocols work. Find which one works best for you. I think that that doesn't grab hold as
You're right.
much because it's so vague. When an
Right.
influencer comes out and they say, you need to do 4 sets of four, that's what will make you have bone density. That's what will grow strength. You're like, I've got something that I can do.
Yeah.
And then when
Yeah.
someone else comes out and they're like, everything works, then the person's like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And I
I
think,
know.
and I think that if we're talking about the influencer side, even the influencer doctor side versus that research side, I
Yeah.
think that influencer side has a much stronger message, even if it's erroneous. And unfortunately, what they end up falling back on is, well, getting somebody to do something is better than nothing. So we're getting a good outcome regardless. In some instances, that can be true because you're getting people lifting. In other instances,
Mhm.
it could not be true because maybe you're, selling them supplements that don't do anything. Maybe you are making them wear weight vests that don't really provide any benefits that are being claimed, but might cause some back pain. Maybe we're making people spend money erroneously. But it's a fun topic because I think that it kind of goes back to human nature and psychology. And
Mhm.
when people have distinct answers on what to do, I think that they feel more capable of taking action. And I think that when, you're talking about the one side, I think that's where the hang up is and where essentially we need to get better.
Yeah, I ask a lot of people who are on my own podcast too this question, how they're feeling in this space, because a lot of people that I'm interviewing are researchers and scientists as well. I don't want to, and you've sort of alluded to this already. I don't want to poo-poo the doctor influencers, because, as you've said, there's a message out there that we weren't hearing 2 years ago at all. So wonderful. And I oftentimes, this is the empath in me. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt as well, right? But then this is what I hear. People are like, I have to do this now. So they'll write me emails. I have to do this type of training. I have to do this type of programming. I have to eat this amount of protein. I have to,
Yep.
because so and so said so. And then, Stu Phillips. I have him on and he calms the whole waters. It's okay. You can do this and you're still getting muscle protein synthesis on this amount of protein. It's okay. As long as you lift toward failure or fatigue or fatiguing your muscles, you can lift lighter and you're still going to build muscle. It feels soothing to me, honestly. Like I really love the broader sweep because it is going to include more of our audience. So this is what I find. Some of the protocols that we're hearing are meant not for the general public, not for Gen Pop. It's more for maybe the athlete, the person who wants to optimize. That's different than, just our entry level or even, I don't know, just basic
What's really funny
movement,
is
right?
I've seen that spun that way, but even that is debatable. Because when people say like there's a 4x4 that you have to do, or you have to eat before you train, even for athletes, it kind of
Yeah.
depends, and
Yeah.
and what you're talking about here is we're essentially removing a lot of choices for people. And so when we talk about you have all of these different choices, it can be harder to start. But I think that it is potentially one of the better ways to get people to sustain it longer because they can choose what they want to do instead. So I think that where you were going with that is really important. But I think it's funny because we have these pluses and minuses to both of the directions, and being able to meld them together would be really nice.
Yeah. Who's going to do that?
I don't know. We're gonna have to think long and hard on this one. Now, one of the
We're
things
going
that
to have to I was going to say, we're going to have to get a new type of influencer. I don't know what she's going to be called, but like
hey,
we
you
have
can
to come
be
up with a name.
you can be the next one.
Yeah, so
So
could you.
one of the things that I'm finding, we're talking and we're getting people shifted. Women are now really buying in to weight training, and
Amazing.
this is one of the most beneficial things that I've seen. This is something that it would have been so beneficial for women growing up. I'm seeing girls in their teens and their 20s really getting into this, and it's wonderful to see. Do you still find that you have concerns with particularly some of your older clients with the fear of potentially getting bulky?
Isn't that funny? Like, good luck, sister, trying to
Yeah.
get bulky. Yeah, it is funny because it takes so much. I mean, I feel like I work so hard to get some muscle on my body, like really hard. And yeah, bulk is not coming. So yeah, that is definitely a myth that we can put to rest. There might be the tiniest subset of humans who have very short levers and genetically they're more predisposed to put on muscle a little bit faster that could potentially, see more mass right off the hop, but it's not super likely that that's going to happen. And so educating women to say that the amount of muscle that you put on is so crucial. It's like those deposits that you make into a bank account when you're younger and how important it is, and it's going to carry you through to your older age, but that it doesn't matter when you start, right? Any
Mhm.
time is better than never starting, and how crucial it is, and for posture, for stability, for balance, to ensure that we don't fall, and if we do slip and fall, that our muscles are available and ready to catch us to ensure that we don't break a femur or a hip. Like these sorts of conversations and thoughts should be forefront in our brain,
Mhm.
right? Not how bulky am I going to be? It's how functional can I be when I'm 80, 90, and beyond. I did love that one concept that I have learned from Dr. Peter Attia. He talks about reverse engineering the microprocesses. So thinking about who you want to be in your 90s and hundreds, what do you want to be able to do? What sort of functional movement patterns do you want to be able to have? Walk your dog, pick up a grandchild, get on the floor and play. And then what muscles are required for that? And to reverse engineer the years to ensure that you're doing those functional movement patterns or making sure those muscles are strong in the areas that are required. And so we talk about that a lot at Move Daily because it's like, do you want to be able to push your suitcase in the overhead bin? I was just on a
Mhm.
plane last week on a trip back from Mexico, and I happily just plopped my suitcase in the overhead bin. And the lady behind me was kind of struggling. And I saw a guy sort of in front of me about to stand up. And I'm like, I got this. So I stood up, turned around, and plopped her suitcase in. But she was probably a little bit older than me, but not much. I'm like, girl, we got to be able to do this for ourselves. And that's where strength training can shine and really give you the ultra benefits that it promises, right? Make those ligaments and joints stronger, build the muscle so that it's available to you for the things you want to do in your life. That brings independence, and that
Mhm.
is a game changer. And I know that because I have a mother-in-law who sits in a wheelchair with dementia in a home, not able to move. And what that's a terrible life. It's terrible. So to see that, and I just feel so horrible for her, and I just don't want that for myself at all. And so the time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining, says JFK, and that's what we're trying to do. Fix the
That's
roof with
that
building muscle.
that's an absolute great quote for that too. And I think the perspective is really important when this happens. Because I'll see when I first start working with women, in a lot of instances, particularly with older women, we'll talk about, okay, well, what equipment do I need at home if I'm going to be working out at home? And I just had somebody sign up who I believe she had 2, 3, and 5 pound dumbbells. And I was like, well, we need to invest in some more. And she was like, well, how strong do you think that I'm going to get? Like, I don't really want to get bulky. And this is one of the reasons that I want to have this conversation, because it's always an interesting thing to see, experienced coaches dealing with this and seeing what tools they use to help get around this, because it's a very legitimate concern that people have. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily going to happen, but it's something that people really get concerned about. And for me, I think that one of the things that you said here is 100% spot on. I think is probably the best avenue that we can go to be able to talk about this with people. Being able to live in everyday life. And when you talk about everyday life, all of a sudden the weights kind of seem more reasonable. Do you want to be able to pick up your 35-pound dog? Do you want to
Right.
be able to pick up your 50-pound grandchild? And a lot of them are like, well, I do pick up my 35-pound dog. And it's like, okay, well, then why wouldn't you need a 35-pound dumbbell? You're already capable of doing this. And often in these cases, you haven't even begun strength training. So wouldn't you think that you would get stronger? But picking up your 50-pound, grandkid has not turned you into the Incredible Hulk. So do we expect this to happen, from weight training? And particularly, this is not to get down on people or to demotivate people in any way, but the older we get, the more that we have some kind of anabolic resistance in play.
Mhm.
The more difficult it becomes to build this lean muscle. And it's not that you can't, because at any time in your life, just like you said, you can benefit from these types of things. But I mean, I think it was Spencer Nadolsky has this great quote, you don't get your driver's license and then be afraid you're going to become a NASCAR driver. And it's very much the same thing. And I think that what a lot of women who believe that they gain muscle exponentially quickly are experiencing is when you first start lifting weights, your skeletal muscle says, okay, I'm being used probably more now than I've ever been used before. And one of the things that it does is it raises glucose store, the muscle glycogen stores. And so you're now storing more muscle glycogen in your muscles than you ever have before. For every gram that goes in there, 3 grams of water also get pulled in from a water weight shift. And so initially, within the first 2, 3 weeks, you're going to see a bump up in size.
Sure.
And my just anecdotally, my thought process is here. A lot of people that get concerned about this, maybe they start lifting for 2 or 3 weeks and then they stop because they're like, okay, I don't want to get, I'm getting way too big. They're seeing a pump for the first time. They're seeing their muscles with some extra glycogen in it. And they're like, oh my God, I'm getting so big, without realizing that that level's off and it doesn't continue to build at that level. And and realizing that this is a really beneficial thing for all aspects of life and health is a really important thing, because now you've got a place, if your body is saying, hey, we need to hyper store some of these things here because they're being used. Now you've got a place for that pizza to go. Now you've got a place for all of that extra glucose to go whenever it needs to be stored, because preferentially it typically gets stored there first before it gets stored in fat tissue. And so this acts as a metabolic sink. So for people that really get concerned about this type of thing, I think that it's great to realize that some of these things are probably not as dramatically negative as you think. And then once you become more trained, it's really funny because, and you can probably speak to this, Tracy, but you're like, man, I wish I gained muscle at the rate that all of these people are really concerned about. And it just
Absolutely.
unfortunately doesn't end up being that way. But there are a lot of benefits to having this. And that's one of those features that I think people don't really understand what's going on there. And so they're misrepresenting it unintentionally as, man, I gained muscle so quickly, I need to slow down.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that could use a nice little shift is this mindset, especially for women, about being small, about being skinny, about being slighter and less than. And so instantly, I mean, I hear this all the time with creatine. Is it going to make me gain weight? And if so, I am not taking it. If the weight on the scale goes up, no. Even if it's water and it's not fat. And so we hear this all the time, right? And there is a mindset that I think is maybe beginning to shift. I have seen it in a number of women. I read a lot of posts. I read all the comments all the time on my posts, and women changing their mindset from being skinny, being slight, being little, to being strong, to being muscular. And so I love that. With this influx of resistance training, and more women than ever in the world before are now doing strength training, we are going to see that. I think it's going to, again, the pendulum's going to shift a bit, and we're going to move away from, I don't think we'll ever move away from skinny talk, but I think we will move from wanting to be skinny to wanting to be strong, because I've
Mhm.
seen it, I've heard it, and the message is getting out there. We are starting to believe that matters more. And so I'm really excited to hear that conversation from women and followers. I hope that it continues. And yeah, but it does require a shift, because, I'll tell people this as well. They're like, am I going to build muscle? Am I going to, my arms bigger? I'm tried on my shirt the other day and it's tight around the sleeves. I don't like that. I put my jeans on, my legs are tight. And so part of it too is nutrition, right? That's a
Mhm.
huge component. So if you are eating to build muscle and you're putting on more lean muscle, everything is kind of going to get bigger. And you could, if you have an excess of body fat around your arms or your legs, then yes, as the muscle grows, everything is going to be a little
Mhm.
bit bigger, and you might feel that in your shirt, in your pants. Um, However, if we have a different approach with our nutrition, maybe you're in a calorie deficit and you're looking to reduce body fat percentage. As the fat drops, the muscle will pop a little bit more. You'll see it defined a little bit more, and it might be more of the look that you're going for. So, it's coaching in the training, but it's also thinking like, what's your nutrition look like, and what's your target, and where are you headed? Like, what's the goal here, folks? And then you reverse engineer all of that in order to reach the goal. But yeah, so talking about mindset, making that shift from skinny to strong, but then also going, okay, diet comes into play here too. So if you don't want everything to look bigger, reducing body fat percentage might be a solution for you in that.
And I think that the buy-in for building muscle is there. I think that one of the issues that we have is historically what we've been taught are signs of success. And I'm hoping, I believe that younger women are going to be more adept at handling this. I think the problem with people our age and older is that socially it's kind of been beaten into women in particular, and this is probably men's fault, that smaller is better. You've got to weigh
Mhm.
108 pounds, you've got to be a size zero, all those different types of things. And what you've said with building muscle will come with size. I mean, that it does, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, more shapely legs. Most people want a bigger booty or at least a peach booty, and that comes with some shape, right? So why would we not expect things like a pant size to maybe go up? And that
Right.
doesn't have to be a sign of things not working. That might be a sign that it is working. And I experience this with my clients all the time where I'll be working with a woman. In particular, men are a little bit less about this, but I think it's probably because society has not beaten dimensions and proportions into us in the same way. So, when I work with a woman, I'm not trying to be ignorant about it. I think that men don't have the same pressure. And people can argue with me if they want. I don't believe that men have the same pressure. I do believe that men have pressure. I don't believe it's to the same magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
But women that I've worked with, when a pant size goes up, there's oftentimes like a knee-jerk reaction of like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And I think that this is potentially one of the reasons why people have struggled to achieve these goals of an athletic physique, because I believe that what you're saying is true. I believe that these days, a lot higher of a percentage of women are buying into that athletic physique rather than the Kate Moss, I just want to be skinny. But I think it's a difficult path for a coach to get them there in many instances because the signs of success are still Kate Moss. They're
Yeah,
not
that's it.
the athletic physique. Are you
Yeah, and we
noticing
lose
that?
our well, we lose our badge of honor if we go from a size 4 pant up into a size 8. Like
Yeah.
honestly, for women, especially my age, holy Hannah, did we ever wear that as a badge of honor?
Yeah.
The smaller pant size or the smaller size. I'm a size small, right? And it just, yeah, that is something that I would just love to see shifted to being, I'm strong. Look what I can do. Look how much I can lift. Look how far I can run. Look at my endurance. Look at my
Mhm.
balance. Look at my stability. Like all of that is just like, let's move there, please. That honors the woman. The other one just, blah, it just degrades. I don't like it. It's so yucky. I would rather just, I mean, I know it's a shift in the making, but I would love for women to feel empowered by their body and
Mhm.
not shamed by it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it also seems to become easier for those physique changes when you start to look at performance as your sign of success. It's a very, very difficult mental shift to make, but it makes a huge difference in long-term sustainability. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was nutrition, which is extremely important. And, for fat loss purposes, it's probably more important than training itself. Training has very distinct benefits.
Yep.
What's your perspective on tracking calories? Do you find this helpful, harmful? How do you incorporate that?
hmm I've worked with many women, right? Many would find that very challenging to do, to track calories, maybe from a psychological standpoint, maybe from a task-oriented standpoint. And so finding other methods, I think, is very helpful for some people. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what approach you take, if it's intermittent fasting or time restricted eating or using the hand method by portion control, right? Or actually macronutrient tracking in an app. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's still, the calories in versus calories burned. And if you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to reduce your body fat. And if you're in a calorie surplus, you're not. So I think at the end of the day, understanding that basic science is really important. But yes, I have worked with many women who have had disordered eating. And so they're not comfortable going back to a stringent tracking mechanism in order to do that. And so we talk a lot about intuitive eating. Is it as precise as macro tracking or tracking calories in an app or tracking protein and fiber? No, it's not because you're guessing, right? And so we always say that the quickest sort of way toward your target is to be the most precise. And that's definitely going to be where you are weighing your food, tracking it in an app, doing that maybe for a period of I like anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks, but the more time you dedicate to it, the more you're going to learn. I think it's an excellent learning curve for most people because you do learn what foods are what. Like I had a client once. I remember she's like, "You'd be so proud of me today, Tracy. I had a vegan burger on a whole wheat bun with sweet potato fries." And I can't remember what mashed potatoes, like so all whole foods, which was true. But I'm like, carb, 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 carb. Where's the protein? Right. But she didn't recognize that. She's like, oh, I
Mhm.
think I'm eating healthy. It looks good. I'm like, and it does. It's whole foods and that's good. But yes. So I think tracking can be very useful in educating us. So we learn what our macronutrients are. We learn which foods have protein and fat together, or carbs and protein together, or what micronutrients are involved. How much fiber does something have? How many different micronutrients does it have? So that great learning curve, but it's also can be the most precise way to reaching your target if your goal is to get there quickly. If you don't need to get there quickly, and I don't recommend getting anywhere quickly with weight loss, I like slow and steady over time. Let's just be clear about that. But if you want to go on a learning curve of just understanding your body, your hunger signals, your satiety levels, right? Like taking time and doing one bite to one breath, putting your fork down in between, taking moments to be mindful about your food, checking in with yourself. There's other ways that we can go about weight loss or fat loss. And I think I kind of like all of them.
Hmm.
Personally, I've done everything, I've taught everything, and I really personally do all of it now that I've done this education of myself. And I think that is really important. People come to us, and I'm sure they come to you as well. And they're like, if you just give me a diet and exercise, I will do exactly what you say. I need it written out for me. I need it spelled out plainly. And I almost refuse to do that with the nutrition because I don't want to just blindly give you something and you follow it without learning anything about nutrition, because that doesn't serve you, because you're going to be able to sustain it for maybe 3 months and then you're going to stop because you haven't learned anything. You haven't learned, how to do healthy food swaps or how to choose foods that make you feel satisfied and that you enjoy. So I think the learning curve of nutrition is really key, especially as we've talked about at the beginning, if you want to be in this for the long haul. This is one of those identity shifts that we make. We learn about nutrition. We learn about, what foods are what macronutrients. We learn what protein is. We learn sort of what a good amount of protein is, how to divide it evenly throughout our day, how to get adequate amount and fiber and all of that. But it's not for the faint of heart. It's a lot to learn, and I will give you that because it can be overwhelming for sure.
Hmm.
But following people who are teaching, the right thing and just ingesting these little tidbits over time. That's how I learned, right? It's over time saying, I want to be this type of person. Ergo, what does this type of person do? We learn about nutrition. We learn about how to lift. We learn about why we walk. We learn about how to sleep better. That's what we do. And yeah, it's a journey, but it's a journey that's worth it.
I think what you were saying there is 100% accurate. There's all of these different strategies for nutrition that can work. I think that education is one of the most important things. Becoming educated on what foods contain what, relative calorie amounts. I think all of these things are extremely important. Assuming there's no disordered eating in play, in which you may have to be a little bit more distinct on what you recommend. I think an idea of a thoughtful meal plan or a hand guide or tracking calories in some way is really important, at least for a short amount of time. 1, 2, 3 months, something like that, I think is extremely important because that gives you the tools with the regular foods that you eat to be able to identify, okay, well, what would fit here roughly, in my life when I'm eating more ad libitum. I think what really catches people is when they don't go through those stages. I mean, this is part of that learning, right? And if you never learn what is in a food, you can't make those on the fly choices quite as well. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up. I mean, the first time that you realize what a serving of peanut butter is where your life really goes downhill. So this is one of those instances where you know people will do like a spoonful of peanut butter. They'll say, well, one serving is like roughly a spoonful. I'll do that, not realizing that they've taken 2 or 3 servings all at once.
And a good protein source. No, a good fat source, but
Right,
maybe not
right.
a high protein source. Yeah.
Well, when you were talking about the vegan burger, that was one of the things that I was thinking is that, people will equate veganism with health,
Yeah.
and plant forward diets certainly have a ton of very convincing data that they're very healthy. And literally everybody should probably be eating more plants. Having said that, a lot of the protein sources in a plant forward diet aren't really protein sources. And this is semantics, depending on who you talk to. But when you're talking about this, the way that I would look at it is what are the proportion of calories that come from protein versus the proportion of calories that
Right.
come from carbs and fats?
Yeah.
And there are relatively fewer sources of protein in a plant forward or a plant only diet that really qualify as like solid protein sources. I mean, you're basically working with like tempeh, tofu, seitan, mycoproteins and like protein powders. There's very few other
Yeah.
sources. And so, for these people that are trying to optimize, physique and performance, you might be eating the same foods over and over and over. And maybe the veggie burger isn't the greatest choice. It could be depending on what the constitute of it is. But being conscious of the fact that some of these foods that have been traditionally called protein sources, like nuts, peanut butter, some of these other ones are quinoa, even. Quinoa is one of the ones that I find tricks people a lot because they're like, it's a really good protein source. It does have some protein in it, yes. But when we're looking at a diet that can't eat things like fish, poultry, all those different types of things, we're essentially looking for, well, how can we get protein in? That doesn't mean that it is the frontline choice, assuming you're able to eat something else. And so when you're talking about intuitive eating, I think intuitive eating is one of the greatest goals that anybody can have. I don't think I think it's a misnomer because if we're talking about something being intuitive, it should be obvious and you should understand it and know it just from common sense. And I don't think
Yes.
intuitive eating is common sense because,
No, it sure isn't. Yeah.
you know,
Most of us aren't even mindful, aren't even present. It is
Mhm.
definitely, that's a big learning curve, that one. And that's something that, yeah, this is exactly why I don't want to give someone just a diet and say, good luck, go off with you. We really want to teach these skills of paying attention to your body and yourself and being able then to make those choices lickety split on the fly when you're in Rome on a
Mhm.
vacation, when you're in Mexico at a buffet, that's the hope is that we've learned enough that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater when we're not in the right context. It's context independent, these choices that we're making. So it doesn't matter what's going on around us and outside of us. We can make these choices because we have an inner knowledge of what makes us feel good, of what fuels our body, of what gives us the body that we want. And that is a learning curve, my friends,
Well, and
but but a
you
good one.
you said something earlier where you were talking about moving away from that all or nothing thinking, and I think that that blends in perfectly with this because you see people, have these situations where maybe they've been tracking diligently and that's their comfort zone, and then a vacation comes up or a holiday comes up. And all of a sudden they're thrown out of that comfort zone. And for a lot of people, that can be where they flounder because they're saying, I'm not distinctly following exactly what I was following before. Now, what do I do?
Yeah.
And when you had talked about all or nothing being one of those spots where people get caught up, this is where you have that ratio shift. Okay, well, how important is the situation? Am I going out to like, an office party where I don't really care that much? Maybe you stay more on plan. Are you out in Rome where you're not normally out in these places? Are you on a vacation to a destination that you're maybe only at once in your life? Well, you're going to shift that ratio and you're going to not give up on the idea of health and nutrition, but you're going to be
Mhm.
shifting that ratio of maybe some more indulgent foods versus the
Yeah.
more nutritionally dense foods. And I think that that's wonderful. And that point that you brought up is very, very valid.
I think shifting the ratio is such a good concept, folks who are listening. Take that because that is excellent. That allows us to sort of have our cake and eat it too, right? That allows us to feel good in our bodies the lion's share of the time and reach our targets that we have for ourselves and have this identity lifestyle that people like us do things like this. We're fit and healthy people. This is what we want. This is how we live. And then when you're out, yeah, in a moment and it feels right and good and you want to partake because your friends are there and you're enjoying a sit down dinner in Italy and there's wine and pizza and you want to, then you do, right? About that balance, but it is yeah, I see so many people totally throwing out all semblance of structure, of working out, of healthy eating. They just throw it all away. And when that happens, I honestly, truly don't believe that they have this identity concept about themselves. They don't have the identity habit dialed in. They've just been doing a diet.
Hmm.
They've just been doing a program.
Yeah, it's something
Because
that's
if
been
you did,
forced to do.
yeah, because if you did, like I don't know. For me, I want to feel good all of the time. Like now, I mean, I don't drink anymore, the odd occasion, but it makes me feel like crap all of the time. Anytime that I would have a glass of wine or bubbly, I like bubbly, but like so bad. Just one glass feels like crap. I know this happens as we age, and in menopause, it's like it seems to be double, triple worse. But yeah, I don't want to do it because I want to be able to wake up in the morning. I've got goals to reach. Like I want to be able to do a workout. I want to be able to go on a walk and see, explore, if I'm in a different town and or visit my friends and not feel sick and not be in bed. Like I don't want that. And even if I overate, like I don't like the uncomfortable feeling. I don't know. Anyway, so I feel concerned when I see people doing that because they'll come back from holidays and they're like, I gained 10 pounds. What? 10 pounds? Like to me, that's almost throwing the baby out with the bathwater because it's hard to lose 10 pounds, right? What if we just didn't gain 10 pounds? What if you just went up a few pounds, like 1 or 2 pounds? But it seems like some people just do an all or nothing. I
Hmm.
just don't think that mentality serves. And I'm curious about not the character, just the personality or the
The
trait or the
motivations.
value system. What is it? Like, what is it about the person that doesn't want to stay the course?
I mean, I think that a lot of that goes back to that shift from an extrinsic to an intrinsic type of motivation. I think that when
Yeah.
you're viewing it as, coaches talk about this all the time. This is a shift for the rest of your life. And if you're going into it thinking that this is only going to be for the next 3 to 4 months, you're probably not going to be successful long term.
Yeah.
There's something called core value eating that I lean into heavily in nutrition coaching. And core value eating is a focus on the what you can add to a diet versus what you can take away. And I think a lot of the times people that have this issue that you're talking about, they go on vacation and all they think about is all the stuff that they've not been eating. Instead of during the entire journey thinking, okay, well, what can I add to my diet to
Yeah.
bring me towards my goals, to add value, to make my life better, to make myself stronger, to be able to pick up that suitcase and put it in the overhead bin, to be able to pick up a bike so I can, take it out of my garage and go for a bike ride, like all those different things that add to your life. When we start to shift that focus away from the negative, the thing that we're restricted on, the problem that we have into the positives that this brings us, I think it becomes a lot easier. When
Mhm.
you're away, I think that that can work just as well too. You're not saying I can't have, that meal out when I'm in Rome. You're saying, hey, can I have some fruit and vegetables today? Can I have some, lean proteins with my normal meals today? Add that in. It's going to secondarily push some of these excessively high caloric foods out of the window anyways. I mean, eat like 2 or 3 apples. You don't have room for anything else. It's gonna, you're gonna, like there's only so much of these high fiber, lower calorie foods that you can eat. And then you focus on that and then you enjoy the space there. You're not removing some of these other foods that you're having out of your diet. You're focusing on, well, if in previous um, vacations I was doing this, can I add something different? And it sort of removes some of that temptation without it feeling like a restriction.
Mhm.
And I think that that
Yeah.
can
And
help
what
people.
what you said also is like, what are you doing on your day to day before you go away on vacation? And every day I'll have something that feels enjoyable to me. So it is not about restricting all of the time. Of course, you would get fatigued from that. And of course, you'd want to break from that, right? We try to set people up for success by including the things that they enjoy into their meal plans and into their life. We don't want to say you can never have that again. I competed back in 2010, figure competition.
Hmm.
I will never do that again. That was very challenging, but
You sound like
the
my
eating,
wife.
the
She used
eating
to
was
do
terrible.
she used to do that and she will say, to anybody that comes to her, because she can prep people, and she's always like, don't do it. And they're like, what?
Yeah,
She's like, it's not worth it.
trust me. Yeah, it's so restrictive, and I mean, kudos to the athletes because it's very challenging mentally. But afterward, you know, I did mine November 3rd, and so Halloween had just passed, and I bought a ton of Halloween candy to have on November 4th. And but then the world was my oyster. Every grocery store I walked into, I'm like, I could have anything in here. Whereas before I could have very little thing. And that's right. And I was in the fitness space. Like I was a trainer at the time. So I knew what balanced eating looked like. And I just couldn't do it because I'd been so
Mhm.
restricted for so long. I'm just like every day, give myself a little something that I couldn't have before. I got to make up time. I've got to have all of this stuff. And yeah, that caused weight gain because I just had restricted so long and then I wanted it all. So I vowed I would never A, do a competition again, but B, that I wouldn't restrict myself from the things that I enjoy, but I would rather try to find a way to fit them in to my overall calorie needs for the day and be sure that I could have my cake and eat it too.
Do you have specific like tactics that you use to move people away from restrictive eating towards more sustainable eating habits? I mean, do you plan in like you know some more indulgent foods into daily life? How do you manage that?
Yeah, we don't actually do specified meal plans. We
Hmm.
teach nutrition coaching at Move Daily Fitness. Like we don't have any that I write specifically for people. It's all nutrition coaching. Again, because part of our approach is that we really want people to be educated in nutrition and be able to make these choices for themselves. So we have hours and hours and hours and hours of coaching on all of that, as you know, because there's so much to teach about learning
Hmm.
that. But yeah, so in terms of adding in things that we enjoy, though, we definitely talk about how to navigate that, how to add those things into your overall calorie allotment, how to make swaps even with things that are super hypercaloric, bringing in things that are a little lower caloric so that you can, again, have your cake and eat it too. It tastes similar or tastes the same, but this is way lower calories, so then it can fit into your overall eating plan. Um, but yeah, we are very much about the education piece, and not everyone wants to take the time for that. And I see that sometimes they just want a diet, and I have refused to give them that because I want them to learn. And so we're not for everyone, and that's okay. Some people, like I said, they just want a diet plan. But like I had a client once, and I used to do this back when I was a personal trainer, but now we have hundreds of people and I can't do individually. So anyway, but when I was a personal trainer going into people's homes, I had a lady who said that to me. She's like, I've gained probably about 40 pounds in the last 6 months. And I just want, if you give me a workout plan, I'm ready to do it. I've got all this equipment in my home and a diet, and I want a specific, what should I eat on what hours? And I will totally do it. I'm totally motivated right now. And I said to her, tell me what happened 6 months ago. What happened 6 months ago? And she began to unload this story of how she was at her office and she walked around the corner and saw her boss talking to her best friend, whispering something, and she heard her name and hushed whispers. And she knew without a shadow of a doubt they were talking about her. And she said, I turned around, I got into my car, and I went home and I drove past a Dairy Queen. And I went in and I got something to medicate my feelings of shame, of embarrassment, of whatever. And she goes, and then I've stopped every day since then, every day. And so a diet is not going to fix that. Knowing what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat is never going to fix that. So now we have to open up Pandora's box and we have to explore the why behind what we eat and why we sabotage ourselves and why we throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so to me, that is such an important part of the equation. This is why I interview psychologists and psychiatrists. We have a new psychiatrist coming next week. We're going to be talking all about just the psyche, the soul, the reason, the why behind our behavior patterns. Because again, we can give someone a plan and they could follow it for 3 months and they could lose all the weight and get the body, on the way to what they want. But if we don't understand some of those triggers or what drives them or what sabotages them, they're going to be right back on the hamster wheel again. And I don't want that for people. I want them to be able to shift into a healthy identity for the long haul. And that takes work.
I mean, Perfect. That's also a great place to wrap this up because what we can do is this is part A. Part B, you can tune into Tracy's podcast whenever it comes out from next week to get into some of the strategies and psychology to be able to manage this. I think that's a really good A/B there. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
sharing your time and expertise, Tracy. Where can people find you online?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alan. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. And Alan's been on our podcast a few times too, so you can Google his name and my name together, and I'm sure it'll pop up. We're at Move Daily Fitness. So over on Instagram, it's Move Daily Fitness. On Facebook, we have a public Facebook group called Move Daily Hustle. I'm also over there as Tracy Steen. YouTube, we've got over 2,000 follow along video workouts. So that's Tracy Steen, Move Daily. And then our podcast is Move Daily Talks. So love to see you over there.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for joining us on another episode of No Bull Just Bacon. Make sure to give Tracy and myself a follow for more daily fitness information, and we'll see you next time.